let's go ahead and stand together as we worship this morning. All right, let's sing. Here we go. From wherever spring arise to heal the ground, from wherever searching comes, the look is out. A trace of what we're looking for, so be quiet now and wait. The ocean is growing. The ocean is growing. The tide is coming in. Here it is. Here is our King. Here is our love. Here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one. He is Jesus. He is our King. He is our love. He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one. He is Jesus. And what was said to the rose to make it unfold was said to me here in my chest. So be quiet now and rest. Ocean is growing. Tide is coming in. Here it is. Here is our King. Here is our love. Here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one. He is Jesus. He is our King. He is our love. He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one. He is Jesus. Here is our King, here is our love, here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. He is our King, He is our love, He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. Here is our King, here is our love, here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. He is our King. He is our King, He is our love, He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. Amen. Let's keep singing this morning. Let's lift up His name this morning. I sing praises to your name. Praise Be lifted up, be lifted higher. All together. Be lifted up, be lifted higher. Be lifted up, be lifted higher. Let's just take a minute. Amen. Good morning, Quest. It's good to be here with you guys. We're going to keep singing this morning. We're going to hear from Jim and Susan Brandt this morning, and it's going to be an awesome testimony of faith. But this morning, we worship because there's beauty and freedom in the gospel. And the gospel is this: if you haven't heard it, it's good news. It's that while we were still sinners, Christ came and died for us and washed us clean, that we might have life in him. Amen. Let's sing this morning. I hear the Savior say,
Good morning. Welcome to Quest. Hi, good to be here this morning. I'm Jonathan. I serve on the pastoral staff here, and it is great to be with you, all of you here in person. For those of you watching online, we are just glad to be together. And Psalm 95 says to enter into God's presence with thanksgiving. There's something profound, I think, for the human heart to enter in regularly to the spot of thankfulness and to sing these songs about what God has done and how he has sustained us through the ups and downs of life. And so to be here together week in, week out to worship, we're really glad to have you here on this journey together. And if you're new here, I want to especially welcome, or you're newer-ish, we're really glad to have you here. We have some visitors cards over there if you can fill out and say, hey, my name's Joe and this is who I am. We'd love to get you connected and plugged in. Here at Quest, we want to be a place where we seek God, love people, engage life, and find hope, where we can seek God together on our journey as we think through the big questions of life, of who God is and what it means for us today, and in that process to really love people, to really care deeply about each and every person, and to engage life, the questions, the struggles, the hardships, to engage the real things in real life. Authenticity. It's not about being slick or cool. We just want to have the real you and the real me together to connect with a real God. And in that process that we would find hope, something that's durable and not a flimsy, wishful thinking hope, but a very real sense of a trust in the character of God and his presence with us. So if you're here this morning and you have some stuff on your mind, on your heart, that you're like, as I engage life, I got some stuff I could use some prayer for. I want to encourage you, we have these prayer cards that says, how can I pray for you? They're green out over on our lobby desk. And you could fill this out and say, hey, my name is Joe, and I'm really struggling with this. Or you don't even have to give a bunch of details, but if you want some people to be praying for you, engaging life with you, and you can list contact information on there, we'd love for you to fill this out, and you can drop it in the tithes and offering box. It's part of your worship of saying, I need to be closer to God. I need some help. So grab one of these, fill it out. We'd love to pray for you. Now, we also have a bunch of other stuff here at the ministry table where you can sign up for different groups and activities and things coming up. And to run through all of that, we have the skinny to give you the skinny on those events. So check it out.
Good morning, Quest. Whether you're here in person or tuning in online, it's time to listen up because here's the skinny. The upcoming men's Bible study for Better Man has two different options. Patrick Lloyd is leading a group starting Wednesday, February 12th at 7 p.m., and it will meet the second and fourth Wednesdays at his home. Kevin Hughes is leading the other Better Man group over Zoom on Tuesdays from 6 to 7:30 a.m. This group starts Tuesday, March 4th. You can sign up for either one of these groups at the ministry table. The Legends, our group for folks 65 and up, is having a lunch next Sunday after service. It'll be a soup and salad lunch for only $10 per person. Sign up at the ministry table to let them know you're coming because today is the last day to do so. Quest students, the winter retreat is happening February 15th and 16th at Pinecrest Camp. The cost is $115 per student and the registration link can be found online. The deadline is coming up quick, so be sure to register your students this week. We're still looking for a few new members of the teams for hospitality, parking lot, and safety. Quest isn't just a building, it's a body of people, and so we need our people to pitch in and help make Quest what it is. Thank you for considering joining a Sunday morning ministry team. Signups can be found at the ministry table, and you can also check out the website for more information on anything you saw here today, plus so much more, and you will find that at questchurchstl.org. Now please welcome Kevin to the stage.
Okay. This is a weird church. Have you ever noticed that? Hey, that men's group that's going to meet on Wednesday nights, it's set up there. It's going to be started on the 12th of February. It's not true. And the leader let me know, and I forgot to pass it on. It started on the 26th because on the 12th, they have a son that's going to be graduating from the police academy. And you dare not miss that. So, hey, you guys, welcome. Glad you're here. We're going to do something a little bit different today, but let me start by saying this. We have been in this series recently called Messy Church, okay? So Messy Church is all about a study in the book It's in the New Testament of 1 Corinthians. And as Paul is writing this letter to the Corinthians, it's a wild, kind of very mixed up city. And so there are people coming to Christ from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of influences, and it's a little crazy. And so the culture definitely flowed over into the church, and Paul's trying to help the church get healthier and more mature and dealing with some of these things that are going on in the culture that have invaded the church, okay? So it's called Messy Church, a study of 1 Corinthians. Now, we also have said the reason that it's a messy church is because we live in a messy world. And the reason we have a messy world is because we have messy lives. So we'll just put messy life up here. And sometimes life gets messy. I don't know if you've ever noticed that or ever seen that, maybe at a distance from other people. But life can get a little bit messy. And so let me just kind of say this. We all have a story that's unfolding, right? We do. All of our lives are a story that's unfolding. And it's with, in this next section to highlight, it's with our active involvement. We are not actually just observers of life. You and I live it. Sometimes, people ask me this morning, how was your week? And I'm like, I don't really actually remember. The week was a bit of a blur. It was just one of those weeks, I don't know, all the snow melted, and there was fog, and there was this meeting, and it just seemed like, and I had a police training for chaplains, and I just thought, wow, this week was a bit of a blur, but it didn't happen without my active involvement. Now, sometimes that is for the good, and there are times where it is for the not so good. That's our life, right? And so sometimes in the midst of that, we are our own worst enemy. Let's put this bottom section on there. We are our own worst enemy, right? There are these self-inflicted injuries that leave scars in our time and are at times debilitating. It's true. That's probably the most insidious, craziest part of life. Not only for me, but as I watch others, it's the self-inflicted things that are just so tragic because we mess up our own stuff, right? We all have stuff. So Diane and I call it, we have stuff. And that stuff gets squeezed out through the seams of our lives, and we impact ourselves and others with our stuff. That's probably the hardest part. Next slide. There are other times when our story is thrust upon us from outside forces and circumstances that we can't control. And we definitely wouldn't choose or prefer those, right? It just happens. Something happens, it wasn't our fault. It just happens. Those are hard. And I want to say this, that on this next slide, the journey, the adventure, that puts kind of a positive spin on it, right? And it is part of an adventure. And this trek, this quest, that's really why we named the church Quest. We're all on a quest. We're all trying to figure out life. We're trying to figure out how do I make it through? What do I do with all the stuff of life? All the good stuff and all the medium stuff and all the bad stuff, how do I make it through? It's a quest. Would say, what is your quest? And though that was a comedy, it's a really good question. What is your quest? And here's the reality. It's not just academic, is it? This journey, this adventure, this quest is not simply academic. It is very personal. It's very real. It goes deep in who we are. It is who we are. We're working through that. And now it can be exciting and it can be challenging, for sure. But it can also be despairing and profoundly. When I say profoundly, I don't even mean profoundly. I mean something deeper than that. It can be both despairing and profoundly difficult as we work through and walk through the messy life that happens and sometimes happens to us. So let me just say this on the next slide. There is this unique aspect of the biblical faith. There is a uniqueness to a biblical faith where we actually believe that somehow, in some way, that beyond our ability to totally comprehend, that there is a God who is weaving our stories into his story. Now, we actually believe that as a believer, as a biblical believer. Now, do we totally get it? Can we describe it? Can we put our arms around it? Can we put it in a book and kind of control it, or put it in a box, maybe is a better way to put it? No, it's beyond sometimes our ability to really describe or comprehend. But at the same time, we do believe that God is weaving all of our stories into his story. And it kind of said this way, that his sovereignty over every event is providentially making sense of the things in our lives, even if they don't make total sense to us. That God is at work. Now, you guys, can I figure out God and kind of put him in a box? I can't. But he said, Kevin, I am sovereign. I own every event of all of life. And I am providentially working it out. And I know it's bigger than your mind can handle. But I can handle it. And you can trust me with that. That's a Christian faith, believing that. So this is one of my favorite illustrations. I say it a lot, but this is what we're all signed up for, isn't it? This next one. That's what we signed up for. Is that what you signed up for? It's what I signed up for. You know, I'm like, hey, the life that I want, it's this really cute house, really nice house. It's got a really nice picket fence in front. It's all fixed up. It's painted right. This is what I signed up for. And this is what happens. Have you ever felt that? Like, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the better one. I signed up for something that wasn't broken down and rotted, that needs a total redo. I didn't sign up for that. And yet, it begins to happen at all sorts of points of life. And you've heard me say before, when I was in the 7th grade, I lost a friend to a heart attack. He was in 7th grade. He had a bad heart and no one knew it, and he died during track practice. I watched it. It's like, it totally unsettled me, right? When I was in 9th grade, one of my best friends got involved in the early form of the drug culture. And he was, on his drug habit, he robbed a store one night. And as he was leaving, he pointed at the policeman, and the policeman did his proper routine and shot Dave and killed him. And I thought, whoa. And it was a system that he was inviting me into, this drug thing. I didn't sure I wanted to do it. In fact, I knew I didn't want to do the drug part, but they were all my buddies. And then all of a sudden, life was tragic. And you just keep going of all the events in life. So life begins to feel like this. It feels like a messy life, right? So here's what I'd like to do. We're going to do this thing kind of wiggle through this. But I'd like you to meet each other. And you don't necessarily have to talk about your messy life, okay? Well, what you could talk is you could say, when's the last time you found a face mask in a place you never expected it to be since have you ever found, like, reach in a pocket of your jacket and you go, oh, I haven't seen that thing in 5 years. I found the other day, the console of my truck, a face mask had gotten stuffed in a place and it worked its way out. And I'm like, how long has that been in there? That's what I'm like for you. So when's the last time you found a face mask? But just know, when the person you meet today, there's messy stuff in life. They've either been through something really messy, they're in the middle of one, or one's coming. That's life. So just be appreciative of this human being you're going to meet, okay? But meet someone maybe you know or you don't know, and I'll give you 2.5 minutes to do it. Enjoy them, because that's part of the reason we're here, is to share our messy lives together, right? Ready? Go. All right, let's bring this thing back together. All right. All right. All right, here we go. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get them back. They're not coming back. All right, here we go. All right. Come on back. Okay, maybe they won't come back. Okay, here we go. All right. All right, you guys.
It's going to be awesome.
Today's going to be a little different. We're going to tell a story. We're going to tell part of their story. This is Jim and Susan Brandt. I'd like to introduce them just for a little bit to kind of set the context. Now, in their story, to tell the whole story would take hours and hours and hours. Okay, so we're going to kind of pick and choose a little bit through this story. But I think it's a story that's worth telling. And I think it's a story that we all can relate to. Maybe not exactly in every piece of it, but we all know that our lives have similar things. And so this is a story that is a little abnormal. It's a little extreme, but so let me just introduce them real quickly. Jim and Susan. So Jim is originally from St. Paul, Minnesota. He's been in business, a family business, for most of his career. Much of that happened in Kansas City, and then at some point they moved here. I'll cover that in a second. In fact, Jim, am I correct in remembering that this family business started in 1894?
Our family business, yes, our family business started in 1894, yeah, and it's still going.
Yeah, that is phenomenal,
And
isn't
we're
it?
in our 5th generation.
Wow, and it got better every generation.
Well, we like to think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and so, but he came to faith in 7th grade. So he's known the Lord in a meaningful way since he was 12 years old. So now, here's Susan. Susan was born in Pensacola, Florida. Her dad was a fighter pilot in the Navy, so she's moved around quite a bit as a kid and doing a variety of things. Her career, she's a financial planner, and she's done that for, well, she's only 25, so she's only done it a few years. And but she came to faith as a 7-year-old. And it was meaningful. Now, here's kind of their joint story, if you will, a little bit. They met in the chapel at Buford Air Station in South Carolina. So Jim was, at that point, a Marine, and Susan was one of 3 teenage daughters of the base chaplain. And so chapel attendance was really good because there are these 3 cute teenage girls, right? And Jim, no fool, you know, I mean, he's like, okay, you're going to check this out. And now, they married in 1973. That's 51 years ago. And after a bunch of years, like I said, in Kansas City, I think like 20 years, they moved to St. Louis in 1993. And so they've been here ever since.
She's an amazing and wonderful wife.
Yeah. It's true. And it is it's a true statement. So bring us to the story we're going to relate to today is January 15th, 2024, which was just a little over a year ago. And what happened that day is what's called a AAA, or it's an abdominal aortic aneurysm. Now let me give you a picture. This is here's how your system works, just so you know. This aorta is the largest artery in your body. It goes from your heart, and then it heads down through your torso, and then it splits into all sorts of things, getting blood to every part of your body. And there are kind of 2 different kinds of aneurysms. You can have a thoracic, which is the higher part, or you can have an abdominal, which is a little bit lower part. And for Jim, this aneurysm, which ruptured, was really actually all the way down. It went from the top to the bottom.
It's called a dissection.
It is ripped wide open. Now, your aorta has a couple of different levels to it, or kind of liners. Yeah, thank you. And the inner liner ruptured and tore from top to bottom. Now, the outer liner didn't, and it's the only reason that he didn't literally die on the spot.
It's one of the amazing things about the way God made our bodies. When it says in Psalm 139 how wonderfully our bodies are made. Because if there wasn't two walls in the aorta, I would have bled out.
Yeah, on the
I
spot.
would have gone to heaven at that time.
Yeah. So when it all happened immediately, and we'll kind of stop and tell part of the story, is the doctors, the surgeons, everyone there, said to Susan, because Jim was kind of out, this is less than 1% chance of living. This is less than 1%, which is pretty radical. So let me ask this question, first one. What went on in your head and your heart? Now you're on the one who's conscious at this point. Your head and your heart when the doctor told you that he has less than 1% chance. What?
First, it was just shock. I mean, it was just a normal day, a normal evening, and all of a sudden this happened, and we were rushing to the emergency room or in the ambulance, and you know, they found out what it was, and it was just a shock. Our daughter was there with us, and there was a shock. There was fear. There was sadness. There was kind of already a grieving, knowing that, man, this could be it. This may be the last time we see each other. And they called the surgeon, and God miraculously had already provided that the surgeon just happened to be one of the top surgeons in the nation for heart surgeons. And so he came running from his house. He was on call that night. It was Martin Luther King Day, so they had a tighter schedule because it was a holiday, so they hadn't done as many surgeries that day. But he came rushing in, and he said, I'm not going to lie to you. Most people do not survive this, and Jim has less than a 1% chance to live. So you need to say your goodbyes now, because we need to get him to surgery and give him that little bit of chance. And so off they took him. And it was terrifying, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Well, and then the surgery took 7 hours, and the surgeon said it was the hardest surgery that he had ever done.
Yeah. Now, Susan, you immediately, I mean, you're feeling all those feelings, but you also, it was about 11 or so at night, it was late at night, so you decided to get in touch with every person who was in a waking hour that you knew. Like, could you tell us a little bit about what you did?
Well, I knew we needed a lot of prayer, because Jim was not gonna survive this without God intervening, and without a miracle, that he was not gonna survive this night. And so I thought, okay, I let our children know, but everybody else, I thought, I don't want to wake them up. But we have worked with missionaries all over the world, and through different, some here with First E-Free, with a missionary organization I work with. And so we had a lot of missionaries around the world. So I began texting all of these missionaries on WhatsApp and Viber and letting them know so that they could be praying all night, because that was just my first thought was we need prayer, we need help. And so we were up all night, Sarah and I, with just in the waiting room waiting, but knowing all those prayers and immediately getting responses back from all these people, hundreds of people, who then put it out to every one of their team members and all of the missionaries that they were all working with. So around the world, people were praying for Jim during that extremely difficult night. And then the next morning, as he said, when they called to say he had survived the surgery, then I could start calling everybody in America and letting everybody here know about it and getting their prayers going.
Yeah, just so you know, you could call us at night. It's okay.
Okay. Kevin was right there when I called him, though. When I called Kevin to let him know, I want you to know that he dropped everything and he came up to the hospital, and he was right there through it all with us and ministering to us, and that was a real blessing, because you don't know what to do. You're just in a state of just kind of almost like a fog, like you said. You don't really hardly have any brain capacity to think. So to have somebody else there to come alongside you and be there for you, that was extremely important to me and to our family and to our children. So I want to thank Kevin for that.
I did, but I will say it's maybe the most intense thing I've ever seen. There weren't tubes going in and out of him. There were hoses going in and out of his body. It's like, I can't even describe it.
Well, you should have seen Kevin's face when he took his first look at Jim and walked into that room. It was like a big, huge state of shock and the biggest eyes you've ever seen. He just had never seen anything like that, I could tell, and neither had I.
But
Yeah.
as everybody knows, we have wonderful people in this church, and there was many days where, yes, it was less than 1% chance that I could survive the first day, but that was true for many days after. And Kevin was there many times on those days, and Brian came and Jonathan came. So as you know, we have wonderful people in this church, and we're fortunate to have them here on staff, and Kevin as our pastor.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to just say that one of the things I'd like to emphasize about being up here this morning is this part of my journey, the power of prayer. And as Susan mentioned, we had prayer going around the world. But I know that many of you prayed for me, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I'd like for you to think for a second that, or not for a second, but forever, that you were praying for something that I would imagine you were praying for my recovery. So you were praying for something that had less than 1% chance to bring an answer from God of yes. So, and it happened. So you were praying for something that had 1 in 100 chances of happening, and it did happen. So, I mean, that has to be a powerful encouragement in the future in your prayer life, to pray big, because God can answer prayer, and even in very dire circumstances.
Well, you guys, let me ask this next question. Where did you see God's handiwork in the midst of these difficult circumstances? And it was a long period of time, so you probably saw different things. I know you've mentioned just the fact that you lived close enough to the fire department where they could get an ambulance there very quickly and get you to St. Luke's was probably one of the incredible kindnesses of God.
That was a miracle in itself, and that it happened when we were sitting right there together. If it had happened when we were apart, he would have probably died. So that was one of the beginning of the miracles. And then that I already mentioned the surgeon, that he happened to be there and was just the surgeon that we needed. And the fact that he survived that surgery. He lost every single bit of his blood in his body, and the St. Luke's had never seen so much blood used in an operation in all the years of St. Luke's. So it was a miracle that he survived. When he lost all that, he completely changed his blood type. So that was another miracle. Without blood, our life is in the blood, the Bible says, and he lost all of his. So it was a miracle from God that he survived that. And then when they called me that next morning, the doctor said there's not really much chance that he's going to survive, but we'll let you come up and see him in a little bit. You need to call the family, but his chances of survival are extremely, extremely low. And yet he did survive that day. And then he survived the next day. And every day for weeks, there was something that was another miracle. His heart wasn't working. His right ventricle wasn't working. Many of you read my prayer letters I sent out, and all of these things that weren't working that miraculously began working. All the doctors, all the ER doctors, I mean the nurses, not the ER doctors, the ICU doctors, the nurses, they all said, and everybody that looked at his chart said, how is he alive? He shouldn't be alive. Every single medical person that has looked at his information through all this last year, and there have been a lot of them because we've been with a lot of doctors, but every single one of them, their first comment is, how is he alive? And so they saw this miracle from God every single day as everything would go wrong. You know, there were just so many things to overcome. And everything from, he couldn't produce his own blood. They had to have an ECMO going through his body. He couldn't breathe because his heart had to send blood to his lungs, so he couldn't breathe, so he had to be on a ventilator. And they asked me many, many times if I wanted to have him disconnected. And my answer was always, is there hope? If there's no hope, he would not want to be hooked up to all of this. But if there's hope, then we want to give it a chance. And so God would just always show us there's still hope. And I mean, the surgeon that did this, I mean, everybody was just shocked. Anyway, you were going to say something?
Well, after a while, there's a time where I became conscious, and I was thanking the surgeon for saving my life, and he said, I gave you a chance to live, but it's these nurses that kept you alive. And so I don't know how many nurses we have here in our fellowship, but you all have a very special calling. And I was supported by many, many instruments, and if any one of those would have gone awry, indicating the fragile condition of my health, I would have gone to heaven at that time.
You know, it's interesting, I met a few of the nurses from St. Luke's, where he was at for a month?
A month.
A month, and then he went to Mobap for a month, and then he went to a rehab hospital. But there were nurses from St. Luke's who visited him repetitively at Mobap, who also visited him again at the rehab hospital because he'd become.
That was the impact that he had on these lives, because he would visit with them. Oftentimes he couldn't sleep at night, so he would be just awake day and night. They had him on so many different meds that wouldn't let him sleep. And so when he was able to talk, even when I wasn't there, and I was there 12 hours a day, but when I wasn't there, he would talk with them. And so they got to know who Jim really was, and they became very attached to him as their patient. And the entire OR cheered for him on every little thing that went right. They cheered for him, and every one of them wanted to check and see how he was doing when things were going bad. When he aspirated numerous times and he didn't get pneumonia, that was another miracle. And when his right ventricle began to work, and that was a miracle, because you can't live without that. And his stomach shut down, and he wasn't able to have any nourishment going in, and yet he overcame that, and that was a miracle. At one point, when we thought he was kind of getting much better, and maybe it wasn't going to be so life-threatening, then all of a sudden he ended up getting clots that developed in his ventilator, and so that he couldn't breathe. So they had to bag him a few times. So it was every day for a month. It was just that precarious every day, just having to trust in God, that it was only God and the prayers of the faithful Christians like you guys. And I want to make a shout out to Grace. Grace and Andrew. Grace sent up some of the most beautiful prayers. Every time I would say something that we need to pray for this today, she would send me the most beautiful prayer that God had placed on her heart. And that was always so touching to me and helped me so much as I sat there for all those hours every day.
Jim, maybe this is a little bit, even though you were in effect, a coma for all that time, for much of that, you still experienced some things. And I know you said, I don't know if it was the Lord, I don't know exactly what to make out of it, but there were things going on in you.
Well, a lot of you probably have read about near-death experiences, and I've read some of those myself, and they're characterized by people seeing the Shekinah glory, the heaven, being able to see heaven, or Jesus coming, or angels. But I want to assure you that I didn't see any of that. And because obviously I wasn't going to go to heaven at that time. But I did see a light, and so I focused on it. I said, well, maybe I'm going to go to heaven now. But once it didn't become bright enough, I said, well, I must not be going to go to heaven now, because that light has to be brighter to be heaven. But somehow cognitively I could comprehend these things. But at some point I could apparently hear what Susan was saying at my side, and that she had people around the world praying for me. And at one time I saw bands of light, and in those bands of light were people praying, and I just assumed that those were the people around the world praying for me. And so again, I just want to emphasize the power of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first questions I asked him when they first finally let him wake up was, what did you see when you were on the other side? And the first thing he said was, I saw people in all different shapes and sizes of rooms, some just one, some in groups, and they were all praying for me. And at that point, he didn't mention the bands of light, but then later he mentioned those bands of light. So that was one of the first things that he said when he was able to be awake and speak.
Wow. Okay, that's incredible. Yeah. Now, this may be more part of the medical piece, but it helps us understand what you went through. The medical staff were concerned about brain damage and a stroke, and maybe even this next question kind of combined to that. The body goes into survival mode. And what happened with that? So in that whole, they didn't know if he'd be a vegetable. But he's doing pretty stinking good, and
passed all its cognitive tests with flying colors.
You can see.
That was one of the little miracles that made up that was included in the big miracle. As much as my body suffered and lost physically, God spared my cognition.
Yeah, that's great. But you did have a stroke along the way.
Yeah. Well, of course, when my heart was real weak, then I had a stroke on the left side, so that's why I still have a cane, but I'm grateful that I can walk, because when it first happened, I couldn't even move my left leg and foot and everything. Yeah.
And then when the body tries to survive, it kind of draws everything into the core. It's kind of in your chest, in your torso. You had a lot of problems with your extremities.
The extremities suffer because the blood can't get there, so I actually have lost feeling in my toes and feet and hands. But it's a little price to pay. It's okay.
And in the beginning, almost immediately, within 48 hours, his fingers and toes began to swell up, as did his whole body. His head, everything began to swell. And within a couple of more days, his fingers and toes, just like somebody who has frostbite, no oxygen were going to those extremities, so they began to turn dark and have large blisters. It looked like kind of like brats you'd burnt on the grill. And so that was very scary looking. And I kept asking the doctors, can I do something? Can I rub them? Can I do something to make them warm? And the surgeon said, Susan, there's nothing you can do. That's the body's natural way of protecting. You can live without fingers and toes, but you can't live without a brain and lungs and a heart and a stomach. You can't live without those things. So the body is naturally God made it. He didn't say God made it, but we know God made it to send the things that we have to survive. And so that's what happened, but at the expense of these other things. And so many times they told us, you just have to forget about that, and he's probably going to lose a lot of his fingers and toes just because they haven't been able to have any blood flow. And even though he was on an ECMO machine, it does not produce the type of blood flow that God naturally made in our bodies. It's the best that man has been able to come up with, which is amazing, but it's not even close to the way God made our natural bodies to have the blood flowing. So, anyway, so that was just something we had to deal with, and we would worry about that at another time.
Susan got quite an education while I was sedated. She could be a nurse now.
Yeah, a lot of them now ask me when I go to a doctor's office and they say, "Now, what kind of a nurse were you?" It's like, I was the kind of nurse who hated blood, would faint at the sight of blood, and couldn't stand anything that looked icky or smelly or any of that kind of stuff. I work with numbers. My sister is a nurse, and I didn't get any of those genes. So this was very difficult. Even the very first time I got to go see him, and they still had him open, and there's all these hoses of blood going everywhere, and it was extremely difficult even to look at. But God helps you to adapt, and you're able to handle it after a while. So anyway.
Well, his fingers and toes were all very black. And it was hard to see. But at the end of the day, you lost one half of one toe. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. I'm not sure how we're doing on time here, but a second thing I'd like to emphasize this morning is God's mercy. When if you'd like to refer to 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, God is the God of mercy, but he's also the God of comfort. Sometimes he chooses to be the God of comfort. And if I would have gone to heaven last year, then he would have been the God of comfort to Susan and my loved ones. But he chose to be the God of mercy. And it's a testimony. It's one of the things I've seen as I've considered this journey, that the plenteousness of God's mercy, as the psalmist would write. So we have a wonderful God that's just full of mercy, and he extended that to me.
Okay. So now everything is perfect and easy. It's all smoothed out.
Absolutely
And
not.
you are, so my question is, you're not exactly out of the woods here.
Yeah,
Could you tell us kind of where's the situation at this point?
Well, the last time we went back to the cardiologist, or
The heart surgeon.
or Dr. Leidenfrost.
Yeah, the heart surgeon.
The heart surgeon.
And that's another miracle. He stayed with us this whole time, and he kept meeting with Jim. He came to see him several times a day in the ICU unit, and he met regularly with us, had us coming in. I mean, who ever heard of a surgeon doing that? But he took this special interest in Jim, and so we have regularly met with him this whole year. And our last meeting, we hadn't had one for 6 months, and so December 2nd was the time to meet with him, and they did a CT scan. Go ahead.
Yeah, so before I could see the doctor, they wanted me to have a CT scan, and they found another aneurysm. So I have another one now, and
It's very large.
it was too big for surgery. If it was smaller, they could have done minor surgery and put a stent in. But so I'm walking around, I guess, like a ticking time bomb. I could be here today and gone tomorrow. But because if this aneurysm does what the last one did, I could go to heaven right away.
And they can't do, it's inoperable, so there's nothing we can do, humanly speaking, because it's too large, and it's on the opposite side from the last one, and it's on the strong side that kind of kept his body alive when the right side wasn't working, and so now this one is on the left side, and so his right side would not sustain his life if he had to go through that kind of a surgery again. And so this is another time there's nothing we can do. I mean, you just have to trust that God knows what he's doing. He took care of him all last year. He showed us all these miracles. But I'm not going to say we didn't have a week of grieving and despair, just the thought of this again, because we knew what this was like. And the thought of having to live with this large aneurysm there. And as Kevin said, I was more of a financial planner and retirement planner my whole career. So my whole life is in planning. I love to plan things out and have everything organized. And I can't do that with this. I just have to trust God that He knows what's happening. He knows our days that are here on this earth. He knows when it's time for us to go and meet Him in heaven. And we just have to trust that He is in control, and I have to give up control. I didn't realize what a controller I was till this last year when I've had to learn to give up control of the things that I wanted to have control over. But you know what? He's so faithful because He took care of everything. I couldn't have done any of these miracles. I think I need to plan things out, but God's the one that is really in control, and we can trust Him. And but it doesn't make it easy. There's never a day it's not in our heads. You can't not have it in your head. We're humans, but we just have to trust that He knows what's happening. And they don't shrink, they don't go away. So and if that happens, when we're going for another CT scan April the 7th, and if that happens, that will be another huge miracle. So because that does not happen, but regardless, God knows, and He knows, and He's used this in the lives to them as well.
Yeah, that's a third thing that I'd like to emphasize this morning, is that when my health was so fragile there for weeks, Susan chronicled everything, and she wrote these long emails on her phone and then sent them out to my loved ones. And so on our email, where you have the reply, we have like over 60 people in my family clan, and a lot of my family haven't put their faith in the Lord Jesus. And so this was a powerful witness to all my loved ones, my extended loved ones. And as Christians, we know it's really hard to witness, but this was a form of witnessing, and the goodness of God and His mercy and the power of prayer went out to all my extended loved ones that may not have heard or sought out God in their lives in any other way. And we know as Christians that God uses us to accomplish His higher purposes. And so mercy and the power of prayer and witnessing, God used me in that way. But He had to do it in such a way that my health would be set back, as we've described.
All right, as you guys, there's a thousand more. There's so much more to the story. We'd be here all week, and it would be worth it. But as I met with them, as they've said over and over again here, of trusting. And one of the songs that they brought up was a song called "Wonderful, Merciful Savior." It's a great song. I kind of came up with this last second, so I'm going to ask you to do something that's a little weird for us. Jim, I'm going to ask you if you'd help Susan and Jim get off stage and get back to their seats. But you guys, thank you so much. And here, I'll take it. Yeah, you can do that. But we all recognize that we deal with a messy life. And sometimes it just happens. So we understand that. And let me just go back. We were made for this, right? We feel it. We know it. We get it in our soul. We were made, not for that. What are we made for? But we were made for that really perfect little bungalow, right? With nice picket fence. And our lives turn into, well, sometimes it's a lot like that. And that's true for all of us. It's true for Jim and Susan. And so then our lives start feeling like this. There's checkerboard of good and bad. Right? Isn't that what life feels like? And it does. But in John 16, Jesus said this. He said, "I've said these things to you, that in me you may have peace." Then he says, and I highlight it and circle it, "In the world you have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world." And that they have chosen to trust God in the midst of a very difficult thing. Maybe an encouragement to each one of us, I hope. And so I found this video it's a song, Wonderful, Merciful Savior. And it has captions so we can sing along with it. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's a little weird to sing with a video, but I think you all get it deep down in your soul. So here's what I'm going to ask you to, if you would stand. This is our closing song today. We're going to sing this together. So we're going to sing it with the video, and it has the words up there. So it all works, right? And maybe you could just really, and let's engage this on behalf of Jim and Susan, but on behalf of every person who sits in this room, because we've all had this kind of stuff in our lives. So let's sing as we close today.